The clock had just struck midnight in a dim, dusty attic of a century-old building nestled between towering glass giants of New York City, where dreams either soared sky-high or sank silently in shadows, and in that cramped space cluttered with spools of thread, fabric scraps, and worn-out hopes, 19-year-old Eliza Carter sat hunched over a flickering sewing machine, her fingers raw and trembling, eyes heavy from sleep deprivation but her mind steeled by one relentless purpose, finishing these last few custom dresses in time to pay the rent before the end of the week, because eviction didn't come with a warning when your landlord didn't care about excuses or broken hearts, and she wouldn't, let her little brother Joey live in another shelter or sleep on another park bench. The boy had just turned 9, wide-eyed and too thin for his age, with a toothy smile that tried to stay strong even when dinner was just toast or when Eliza lied and said the lights were off because of a power outage, not unpaid bills, and as her needle danced desperately across the hem of the next dress, she thought of how far they'd come in just a year since their mother's sudden passing. An aneurysm that stole her from them in one terrible afternoon and left Eliza to shoulder the world with. No time to grieve, no time to cry, just survive, because there were no grandparents, no aunts, no handouts waiting, only a city that never looked back and jobs that paid by the hour but stole by the soul. She cleaned offices in the morning, delivered groceries in the afternoon, and took online sewing gigs at night, wedding dresses, costume repairs, fashion student prototypes. Anything anyone needed, she made with calloused fingers and hopeful eyes, squeezing every ounce of energy from her worn-out body while Joey slept in a twin mattress beside her makeshift sewing station, the whirring of the machine now a lullaby to him. Above her workspace hung a piece of cardboard where she'd scribbled in permanent marker, "One day, we'll rest, Joey. I promise," and that promise was what kept her going when the pain in her hands made her cry silently into her sleeves or when she had to choose between a bus fare and a loaf of bread, but unknown to her, just 2 floors below, the building's penthouse belonged to someone whose world couldn't have been more different. A 35-year-old tech mogul named Ethan Radford, who'd made his first million selling a cloud storage company from a college dorm room and now ran a portfolio of ventures worth over $700 million, though none of that ever filled the quiet void in his soul, the one left behind by a mother who died before he made it big and a father who left when he was 13. And though he lived in luxury with a view of Central Park and drank coffee flown in from Colombia, he spent most of his nights alone, browsing financial reports or watching old jazz documentaries, disconnected from everything outside his curated bubble, until one Thursday night, returning early from a cancelled investor dinner, he took the building's back staircase, a relic from its pre-renovation days, and heard a strange mechanical hum from the attic, a sound that shouldn't have been there, not in a building he owned, not at that hour, and curiosity drew him upward, step by creaky step, until he reached the top and saw a door slightly ajar, revealing a scene that stunned him to silence. A teenage girl, barely more than a child, hunched over a sewing machine with her head bobbing from fatigue, her face pale under the dim yellow lamp, surrounded by fabric and thread like a battlefield of creativity and desperation. And though he was a man who'd negotiated billion-dollar deals, Ethan found himself frozen by the raw honesty of what he saw: poverty that didn't beg, it worked, it fought, it endured, and as he knocked gently, the girl jumped, eyes wide with fear as she quickly pulled a fabric over her work, her hands shaking, her voice barely steady as she said, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disturb anyone, I'll keep it down," and it hit him then. How many times had she been punished for just trying to survive? He raised his hands and introduced himself awkwardly, saying he lived in the building and was just curious about the noise, but she didn't recognize his name or his status, which was strangely refreshing, and after a few minutes of cautious conversation, he learned her name, Eliza, and that she was behind on rent again and trying to catch up, that she'd taken in her brother after their mother died, and that she was juggling 3 jobs and still barely making it. He asked gently why she didn't apply for help, a grant, a loan, something, and she smiled sadly and said, "People like me don't get picked, Mr. Radford, they get ignored," and that line stuck with him even as he left her that night, promising not to mention what he saw, but inside, something had cracked, something that had long been locked behind money and meetings, and he couldn't sleep. Not with her image haunting him, not with the cardboard promise taped to her wall, so the next morning, he cancelled his meetings and pulled up her employment file, scanned by an assistant months ago when she applied to clean his building part-time, and it was there, simple, humble, and signed with a heart beside her name, and for the first time in a long while, Ethan did something spontaneous, human, uncalculated. He called in a favor from a friend in fashion retail, a woman who ran a boutique chain in Soho that highlighted local talent, and he pitched Eliza, not as a charity case, but as a raw, relentless talent with a story people would care about, a story that deserved to be seen. Within a week, he returned to her attic with a plan and a proposition. He wanted to feature her designs, have her sew a limited line under her name, with full credit and royalties, to be sold online and in stores. And he'd fund the materials and help set her up legally so she'd own every bit of it. Eliza blinked at him like he was speaking a different language, then asked, "Why would you do this?" And he told her the truth, because once upon a time, his mother had sewn dresses for rich women in Connecticut and died before she could ever see him make it, and maybe helping Eliza was a way to keep her memory alive, to give someone like her the break his mother never got. And as she quietly wept, holding the paper contract in her trembling hands, something wordless passed between them. Something sacred, like hope being reborn, and when she told Joey, he cried and jumped into Ethan's arms like he'd known him forever, calling him Mr. Hero, with a grin that nearly broke the billionaire's heart. The launch went viral within a week, press releases, social media posts, even a mini-documentary Ethan funded anonymously about Eliza's journey, and soon, orders came flooding in from across the country. Bridesmaids in Ohio, theater troupes in Chicago, fashion bloggers in LA, all wanting a piece of the girl who sewed her way out of poverty, and Ethan hired her a small team, set her up in a real studio, helped her open a bank account, and paid off her remaining debt quietly, never asking for credit. Joey was enrolled in a private school nearby with a scholarship Ethan arranged discreetly, and for the first time in years, Eliza slept a full 8 hours without waking up in panic, and Ethan, who had once measured success in IPOs and returns, now found joy in watching a boy learn piano or a girl light up when her design trended on Instagram, and what started as an act of kindness slowly became a bond of family, of trust, of second chances, and in time, their connection deepened, not romantic at first, but rooted in mutual respect and shared pain, two souls from different worlds finding healing in each other's presence. And though the media eventually moved on to other stories, Eliza's brand, Joey Threads, named after her brother, continued to grow, known not just for quality but for compassion, hiring other struggling single moms and offering mentorships to teen girls in shelters, and Ethan, always behind the scenes, donated quietly to dozens of causes in her name, realizing that true wealth wasn't what you kept, but what you gave. And one summer afternoon, as they stood together watching Joey perform in a school play, Eliza turned to Ethan and whispered, "I think I found peace," and he smiled and whispered back, "I think I found purpose," and in that moment, surrounded by clapping hands and shining eyes, they both knew that what had begun as a midnight sewing session in a forgotten attic had become something much greater. A testament to what can happen when someone chooses to see the invisible, when someone uses power not to tower but to lift, and as their story was passed down in whispers, blog posts, and school presentations, it carried a message that echoed far beyond their city block, that kindness can change a life, that belief can rebuild a soul, and that even in a world that often looks away, there are still people willing to climb the stairs, open the door, and say, "I see you."